afternoon again, and then I think this is going to be a very interesting panel. First of all, again, I welcome my fellow panelists here, Dr. Mahesh, Mr. Sriramulu Chandu, Dr. Tathagata Dutta, and my dear friend, Mr. Venkat Narayan. And we have been like over various topics we have been discussing, and each panelist here, they are experts in their areas, and I'm very happy that they have a very diverse kind of experience which will help us in talking about the nuances of the supply chain resilience and what factors it is responsible, what India needs to do when we are looking at the global supply, and why we say that we are pharmacy of the world. And to maintain this particular leadership position that we are pharmacy of the world, we need to do much more. We need to do lot. I was saying, 4 areas, 4 pillars, and there are different 4 drivers. And I think it's a great time to learn from each other. And we have right from the supply chain expert to somebody who's highly experienced in the biopharmaceuticals and to large molecules. We have somebody, Mr. Venkat Narayan, who has a very diverse experience in ex-Dr. Reddy's in digital transformation of the company. And I'm sure that you would have worked on how do we transform the manufacturing systems and overall, the reliability of the product because of resilient supply chains. So giving this kind of a background which we looked at, and where are we today in 2026? Let's look at some areas, and I would really invite not a point of a compliance, but maybe if there are divergent views, you're most welcome. You may not agree with something. If you don't agree with what I spoke about also, please feel free to challenge that position, because I think in India, we are a very large country, and one formula doesn't fit all. What may be so good for a very large company may not fit for a very small company or a medium scale enterprises. So we need to do things differently. That's how, if you see the leaderships in India, we are called as a country of leaders, because you will see the leaders from this country everywhere in the world. And here are 4 leaders, and I think good luck to all of you to learn from this. One of my first question, which is on this area which we're talking about, single source supply of APIs, which we talk about. A lot of companies are having that situation. So one of the things from the quality management system point of view, and for ensuring that we have a very rugged supply source, and not only that, we also have a qualified source of such materials. We run through a process called vendor qualification. And I think each one of you would have worked in separate areas. So vendor qualification is being followed by many companies, but many people also say that this is just a paper exercise. And I have seen the comments from certain people say that, yeah, it's documentation. And I don't agree with that note. It is not a documentation. The whole risk of your company depends upon what kind of a sources you are qualifying for your critical APIs or for your own supply chain. So looking at vendor qualification is considered as oftenly a large paperwork exercise. Audits are scheduled months in advance, and this is a checklist based system, and people go fill up the checklist and say this is okay, this is not okay. My question is, does this current quality management system driven qualification process actually predict which vendor is going to fail over the real crisis when it actually happens? For example, if there's a problem and you say that I have a vendor qualified, whether these vendors remain as stable sources or you find disruption. So it's a very diverse views people may have. So I would like to start with you, looking at vendor qualification, what in the quality systems Dr. Reddy's has implemented, and how do you see vendor qualification as a process for securing access to APIs?
Thank you for that question. First of all, compliments to you, Dr. Lamba. The discussion that you just now had on the mic there was by itself complete. I mean, you identified all the levers that are helping or which are not helping as of today and what needs to be done further. Thank you very much for that. So, truly speaking, the 90% of whatever content that all of you had to get, you have already got, in the last 15 to 20 minutes that Dr. Lamba was speaking. Maybe we will add the 10% to that, from this group discussion.
We add 100% to it, I'm sure.
No, and thank you also for saying that there may be a divergence of thought.
Yes.
And thank you for giving that freedom as well. Although for this point, I do not have a divergent view. It is, the vendor qualification, as we have seen most of the times, is that, as you already said, that it's just a paper exercise, some 10 questions to be answered, and that you're done with that. Using some of the digital methods, what we did was also that, and that's how to come my example. One of the vendors, who is also a very big company, more than 1,000 crore turnover, used to give us a certain API, and we used to receive it. But typically what happens is, and more, I call this, as a denigration of the thought process. The thought process going down. There is a big problem with SOPs. If there is an SOP, person stops thinking after that. Dabba band. It's only SOP says do this, I do this. I don't even care to think as to why that sentence is written there. What is the spirit behind that? Should I be doing that? If I have a doubt, should I go to my senior and ask him whether I have a slightly different view on this? Should I do this? वो सब बंद हो गया. SOP says this, so I do this. Like that, if we see, the quality control department was also passing the API that we used to receive from that particular vendor well within the limit, therefore no issue at all. Last 5 years it has been coming and passing every time, and that's fine. But the formulation fellow is again and again facing a question that the dissolution of that particular product is going down. Sometimes it is failing. Therefore the batches are getting thrown out. Right. So we are always then investigating what went wrong with the production process, what went wrong with the analytical process of the finished product, and so on and so forth. But later, when we started some digital work in the plant, and then we said that let's solve this problem through digital. We went back and took the various data points of last 100 batches. And when I say last 100 batches, every material that goes into that, and asking the vendors for all the data of their inputs for their API that has come to us, and all the excipients, each parameter of the excipients, what has been the moving averages of those, what have been the extents of max and min, etc., etc. What we come to know is that there is a change that this vendor did. And I think it is law that he should have told us, but he did not. And then, so gradually their PSD went up, although within our passing range, and that's what was giving him comfort. And so we were also accepting, blindly accepting, because it's passing and using it. Then we came to know that this is a big difference. And when we spoke to them, they said that yes, we have made 2 changes in the last 5 years. And that is how this has come up. But we are aware that your limit is this.
And so we are saying that the vendor is qualified, everything is stable, all supplies are fine.
He is intelligent. He is also saying that we know that you are this limit. Right. We wanted to keep it within this limit. And that's why, although we have changed it, etc., but it is still within your limit.
Making sure it reaches in the same specification.
But he is also not aware, and we were not aware at that point in time, that if it is going into an extreme at the input material, my finished product is getting kicked. Yes. Or its dissolution.
Correct.
And therefore, when this happened and we spoke to him and then brought it back within a certain limit, then we found that the problem was solved. This could happen, in my view, only because digital help was available. Otherwise, tons and tons of data, it's not humanly possible.
You were running actually an analytics on that, because otherwise there is no analytics. There is a lot of data, but there is no use of that data because nobody is actually monitoring it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much.
This is a big lever that industry should use. Digital, we are talking about so many things. Of course, bare minimum being an MES, an electronic batch record. That's fine. I mean, that's good that, data integrity, etc., is taken care of. I mean, I'm proud to say that at least in the last 5 years, there has never ever been a data integrity question in Dr. Reddy's, at least, because everything has got digitalized now.
Right.
All the batch records are digitalized. 69 can never be written as 96.
Right.
So nothing like that can happen without, I can क्या बोलते हैं 56 इंच का
Sina.
छाती. With that we can tell.
Hmm.
That's a huge thing that Indian pharma industries should be able to look and get the importance of.
I think there's a lot to learn from organization like Dr. Reddy's, who's like a front runner in digital transformation. I would move to Dr. Datta, especially knowing we all are very clear sometimes about classical pharmaceuticals, oral solids, liquids, injectables also, that's okay. But large volume or biologics, for example, or biosimilars, for example, or peptides, what is the situation in those areas? How critical are your materials, your input key starting materials for your fermentation processes, for example?
Thank you, sir. So, first thing is we have to define the critical material attributes in the development, early stage of development itself. And we should not go by the vendor COA or whatever the documents provided by the vendor. We always keep certain our in-house specifications, in-house tests, which nowhere, even if we ask the vendors to include in the specification, they will not do that. Like, I am procuring a particular lipid, and that lipid, it is the same source, all the things are meeting, but batch to batch variation is there, and that actually leads to the batch failure.
Despite
Because
having a vendor qualified?
despite having a vendor qualified, and it is a single source, which you are
Right.
talking,
Yes.
because I don't have any other source.
That's typical a problem in many companies today.
And what happens is because we came to know that the glass transition temperature of that lipid is very critical, and they are saying it is not relevant to my product. But then we started performing that glass transition TG. We used to do that, and we had got consistency in the batches. So these are certain things. Then the key starting materials for the synthesis of the oligonucleotides. These are certain things again, and mostly we are dependent on China, and these are very high value key starting materials. But practically, they will say these are key starting materials, and you don't require all these things. So we have to make up a very robust system. Even they, I have experienced that they have changed the site also without intimating us.
Right. Okay.
But then I don't have a choice. I have to buy. But then we have to make up a in-house robust system of qualifying those materials and continuously checking them, so that I can finally land up in that perfect quality of the product, whether it is in the API or in the fill finish. API is good means biologics, fill finish will be good. Biologics, nothing is there in the fill finish. Mahesh ji is smiling because he knows it better than me.
Yeah.
So that is the thing, sir.
Thank you. And I think looking at the supply chain expert is here, Mr. Sriramulu. Yes, yeah, please.
Here challenge is highlighted the important points. So most of the suppliers they don't follow the procedures. They do changes without informing to the customers. Correct. Here important is how to track those changes. What are the ways through digital? Our quality system, quality people has to go frequent and visit their sites.
That's the point,
Very
actually.
important. They have to
not only the preset qualification timeline, but you should be able to go to a vendor site anytime to check.
Absolutely.
Right.
How US FDA they are doing.
Right, exactly.
Scheduled audits are the unscheduled audits.
Absolutely.
That way, customers have to go visit and
You have to use the same approach.
there are ways to find out the changes, even though they have not communicated to the customer, that needs to improve.
Can you give an example, any such incident which happened without naming the supplier? Maybe just talk about what actually your organization did.
So we faced one of the supplier, Hyderabad-based supplier. So from the last 4 years, we are taking stock from him, one of the excipient. But he has changed this process. He has changed the site as well. We don't find out until unless he communicated to us. Until if his assumption is that we are passing as per the customer spec. That's fine.
Right.
But he doesn't have the any approval of the site change. The drug control or all these things. It's impacted. One day, one of the partners is communicated to the drug controller. So they are doing some malpractices, all those things. They visited their site, they identified the cause. So they identified who is the major customer for these. So out of the customers, who are the major customers? So ultimately, we landed in the trouble. So that's the reason most of the suppliers, what they communicated at the time of the AVD process, but they are not following. So here, what we have to do, our customer side, we have to continuously, frequently, we have to visit their site.
Right.
Okay, verify the where they are manufacturing that, what is the communication shared, and all the documentation. There is ways to find out their changes, even though they have not communicated. That has to improve that area.
Right.
I have a
think-
small point to add to that.
Sure.
I think if those vendors look at us, the buyers, as like a regulatory body, then you have a problem.
Yes.
Like how we look at, let's say, US FDA, European, some other agency, that then you have a problem. Because between a vendor and a user, there has to be a trust relationship.
Yes. Yes.
And so if I am making a change, let me tell you that I am making this change. Of course, they are not making the change nefariously. They are not just doing it for, making extra bucks. They are doing it for simplifying their process, maybe a couple of steps being reduced, still not impacting the quality of the guys who are buying the product from you, and so on and so forth. But then why that trust doesn't come? In fact, I would even go to the extent of saying that what we call GMP, we have been talking about GMP for decades, it's actually good working practices that we need. And beyond that, it is good thinking practices that we need.
Right. Correct.
Maturity of a system, of an industry, of a country, I would say, would be coming out of that more than trying to only go and tick boxes on an audit list that I come to your factory with.
Mr. Venkat, I 100% agree with what you're saying, and I'll give you one small anecdote. I quote that many places, and in 2009, I was speaking at one of the CPHIs in Japan, and after this program was finished, many pharmaceutical company heads, they said, we want to have a closed door meeting with you, learning about India story. I said, okay. And they said, what feedback they gave is, your company is fantastic. We have learned a lot. We are enjoying a lot of products coming from India. But there are a few areas which we always experience. And one of that is, when there is a good thing happening in your country or in a company, you will be the first to send us a communication. We have improved this, we have improved the quality. When something goes wrong, you all keep quiet. Nobody informs. And you can correlate this in probably our culture. It's not that, if you go to, for example, some places, some countries, they are the first to inform you. Something went wrong in your system, they will immediately communicate, hold on, so that company can take action if something is going out of control. But here, what we do is, Bhagwan Bharose. Anyway, we'll work it out. We'll find a solution. On the way, we'll find a solution, which many times doesn't happen. And I think this is where your point, which Mr. Chandu said about that, and you said about the trust factor, that plays a very significant role in this relationship between a vendor or a partner and a manufacturer. Yes, Mr. Chandu.
One more important area here is compromise. If the market needs a product badly, sometimes
I don't know.
also compromise.
Yeah.
Even if you see US FDA during COVID, before COVID, we have issued a lot of warning letters, import alerts for the Indian pharma companies, major pharma companies.
Right.
During COVID,
Yes.
they cleared all the companies in a single sentence because they need the product. They compromise. But here also, in a company, sometimes if the market needs the product, patient needs the product, we are compromising. If you compromise, there is a loss of business.
Yeah, because that time nobody is interested in saying that, I have a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even the customer change, the site change, process change, whatever, until the spec is passing,
Right.
until is passing, we are accepting.
Yes.
Because product need,
Right.
urgency, otherwise it's a loss to the business. So these are the compromises.
Right.
Even US also compromising.
I would say US is a separate story. There is a reason behind it. But what you said is, I 100% agree. These are the things we take a short-sighted decisions during these troubled times when things go wrong. I would now come to the CEO, a mindset of a CEO, Dr. Mahesh. When look at what do you see from your perspective this particular area of a single sourcing, and what this qualification process, how it should be done. Is it should be a paper exercise, or you can really go to a vendor site anytime without even informing, just like FDA comes?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting. I think this is a great topic. We need to continuously harp on this, especially because if we have the ambition that we talked about, right? Some of the numbers that you gave, which is 130 billion, that's not going to come by just one change that we do. And it's certainly not going to come by the change that we do only in India, right? Because this is a global ambition for us. So how do we get our supply chains to that global level of performance is how we need to start thinking. Right. Which then takes away all the smaller mindsets that we have around, this, well, we'll manage it, we'll do this, we'll do that, so on and so forth. We won't invest here, we won't invest there. I think that's the overall backdrop that we need to have when we start talking about supply chain in a bigger perspective. Let me actually add a little bit more of complexity to this particular conversation from a biologics perspective, which is something that is very, very pertinent to what the industry is going through. As we move more and more towards biologics, we start to see, one, biologics manufacturing is more complex. Biologics supply chain management is even more complex. You lose a batch, now you're talking crores in the tens or hundreds of crores. Now, what is the cost of that in comparison to everything else that you need to build along the way? And let's talk about supply, vendor management as the first topic. First of all, how many here actually are involved in vendor management? How many of you have actually done something towards vendor management, sent a questionnaire, reviewed it? Very few. Okay, let me tell based on what you heard, you probably got it, that it's a combination of a paper exercise and a physical exercise. What needs to happen is more of the physical, less of the paper. Now, why is that difficult? Why do companies not do it? It's expensive. It's expensive. It's even more challenging when the vendor doesn't want you to be coming to their site that frequently and taking their time away. In biologics, it's even more complicated because some of the complex components that you use in your manufacturing come from the food industry. Soybean hydrolysate, for example, the food industry is a much bigger consumer of that. The pharma is not. So if pharma is not there, I don't really care. So why do I need to entertain somebody coming into my facility and doing an audit of my facility when you are only 10, 20, 30% of my maximum consumption? Those are the kinds of things that you have to battle. And so therefore, it's important that we build systems and we look at operations in a way that we are realizing what the challenges are when we want to implement some of these systems. So we may write a system that, we'll go and do a vendor audit, physical vendor audit once a year, once in 2 years, once in 3 years. In reality, if you're not actually able to do that, have you gone back and said, what is the solution for it? I think that's the mindset that we need to have, of saying what's practically possible. And now if it's really not possible, what am I going to do about it? Can I use technology? The biologics industry has again done that, right? More and more products now, this is what I'm talking about, was a few years back. Now we're talking of more chemically defined media. So that you're not relying on the complex mixture of bipeptides, dipeptides, tripeptides, which are so difficult for you to understand, characterize in your raw material. When you go to chemically defined media, now you've solved that problem. So your dependency and what is, as Dr. Datta said, what all are your components that are contributing to the total quality of the product and therefore are the critical quality attributes, and what is the dependency of that to the supply chain components is what you're able to minimize or de-risk yourself from. So apart from, I think, certainly very important that we have systems that we implement which can be implemented. So first of all, we put together systems that can be actually implemented. Second, look at technology solutions or scientific solutions. We are a country that has a lot of scientific brains. Let's put those to effect. Maybe it's a different way of synthesizing our API. One of the things that we take a lot of pride in is to say, well, I've reduced the number of steps of synthesis. Can we now start to say, well, I've actually prepared a synthetic route which is China independent? that may be an accomplishment that we want to go after. That is what we want to reward our teams for. I'll stop there, but there's a lot more that we can add. There's only one other thing that I'll mention, because we are, and you did say that, let's be a little provocative.
Yes.
I'll challenge Mr. Venkat Narayana on one of the things that he said. I think SOPs are extremely important, right? And he said that he recognizes that as well. What I don't want everybody to take away from this is that SOPs should not be followed blindly. I think SOPs should be followed, it should be written in a way that they have to be followed blindly. During the process of training on an SOP is where it's very important to ask the questions of why, right? So he said, we don't spend the time on understanding why this is written, why we need to do this step, and therefore we just follow it. It's if you're doing both of those in parallel, right? You're understanding the SOP and you're following it. That is when you choose to say, well, ye zarurat nahi hai, I don't need to do this step, I don't need to do that step. That's where shortcuts are not allowed. Right. Otherwise, I believe a better system to build, or the right system to build, is where SOPs are foolproof. Somebody should be able to just do them, bang, 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 bang.
Good. Thank you. I think one of the things I just remembered many years back, when even today, like, I'm not a sourcing expert, I am not a procurement, but I got an opportunity maybe 20 years back to become a leader in the global procurement strategy for ASI when I was working. And I created a scorecard there, looking at a live scorecard situation, where what we need to do in this area is, probably, if you people are aware about continuous process verification, rather than one-time exercise of doing a process validation, is a similar area to move on a continuous process of a scorecard approach using digital technologies, more or less, rather than a one-time exercise of saying my vendor is qualified, and once my first vendor or a one-time physical audit happens and a vendor is qualified, then I need to do just monitoring over a period of time through a virtual interview or maybe a paper-based exercise. No, I think we need to move much more similar to approach of a continuous process verification. I would say to move to an approach of continuous vendor verification rather than going for just vendor qualification. I think I just leave you with that note, and then probably I think some of you should start looking at, because that's one area, if you do it rightly, you would control lot of issues which are happening because of materials and variability which is happening and I can understand what kind of a variability, if it happens into a large molecules, into complex biologicals. We are facing a similar thing on our OSDs or liquids, but this is much more complex into case of a large molecule. So now looking at a situation where we are saying that over a period of time, we are moving from a normal classical pharmaceutical product to a more of a biological in future. Like we all are aware, more anti-diabetics, more metabolic disorder products, they are biologicals. And so are many oncology products. And you will see that the requirement of a cold chain management is something which would actually maybe not even, I would say, double. It may be 3x or 4x requirement in the next few years, the way the situation is going on. Now, the same thing happens here in the cold chain management. We saw that with the data from Bain, that approximately 1/5 of our product gets wasted. In sometimes, I am not saying the product is thrown, is wasted because it goes out of specification. The patient who is getting that product, maybe I would say unlucky kind of a person who receives that kind of a product, because we don't know what changes or impact it will have on a product which requires a very strict temperature control. When you ask the companies, manufacturing, logistic partners, supply chain leaders, and the quality head, they say, my systems are working. So if the systems are working, and if everything is going right, then why this failure is happening of a 20%? When you say out of specifications, which are happening more in the supply chain from the cold chain management point of view. So who's responsible, in your opinion? Who should be held responsible for? Because ultimately it's a what we are playing with the trust as far as the patient part is concerned, because patient doesn't know the product which they are getting is substandard because of something going wrong from the temperature control point of view. So probably I will start with you.
Well, I'm not directly into the logistics area. I have not worked much, but out of a common sense, I can tell you that uh, the kind of engagement that the companies have with the logistics partners have to probably be much deeper than at an arm's length. That you provide the product from here to this so and so country or so and so city, and you get paid this much, whatever it may be. But beyond that, and people had started using those temperature recorders,
Yeah.
those pieces that they put into that, and which the data of which is completely recovered once it reaches the destination,
Right.
so that you are sure of that. Now, the technology around that has also improved.
Yes.
And therefore, everything is available. So now, if something is not available, it's only trust
Yes.
between the manufacturing company and the logistics company. And then that somebody is trying to fool the final patient.
Yeah.
This pains me even more.
Hmm.
Whether that logistics person is fooling the patient or the manufacturer is fooling. But given an ethical question, this is lying with the manufacturer. So
Right.
the manufacturing company should be working very deeply with the logistics companies.
Ultimately, what you're saying is the onus responsibility lies on the manufacturer.
Yes.
I think the good thing to start with.
Internally, you may want to penalize your logistics.
Yes, yes.
You may do
exactly,
whatever.
Exactly.
But otherwise,
But
to the
buck,
patient,
buck stops there
buck
with the
stops
manufacturer.
there. That's
I would like to take supply chain's view.
Responsible is the manufacturer, but here are a lot of challenges to ship the product to the end customer, logistics part. It is not the issue of the freight forwarders, but the issue majorly with the infrastructure across the country, globe. Majority of the airports doesn't have the cold chambers. Keep it. We send the different type of shipments, cold shipments. So one is 2 to 8 degrees and 15-25. Most of the airports, they have the facility 15-25, but they don't have the 2 to 8. And secondly, minus 20 degrees and minus 65 degrees. What are the solutions available in the market? Those are some period. They give the up to 120 hours. But whereas our product to reach to end country or customer, some countries like Latin countries, Chile, Peru, Honduras, Czech Republic, those we don't have the direct airlines. Okay, it goes to different transit points. It touch point, different transit points. It takes a more than a week time, 10 days or 15 days also. There is no direct flights. Offline, we use the offline carriers.
Right.
Discuss. Those cases, what will happen? This temperature cargo, we notice these temperature excursions.
Yes.
So that is the one of the major reason is airports doesn't have the facility to store it, the goods, to connect to the next flight.
I can understand
Whereas
what you're
US
saying.
and Europe, we have the direct flights. Transit time is less than 3-4 days.
Mr. Chandu, I can understand what is happening across the world. If there are problems in the world, what would happen to a patient in India? What will happen to villages, towns? So I think the question revolves around, I am talking about a product in India, supply, manufacturer in Hyderabad, move to a supply chain with a product required in Guwahati, or for example, in Tinsukia region in the Assam area, where what we need to do, I think that's something which is important.
The industry, what are the cold chain solutions, what are available, they need to enhance the period of the 120 hours to around 200 hours, 1 week to 10 days something. That
What is the situation of power? Like you were talking about cold chambers,
types of powers mean
power availability sometimes is an
passive
issue.
solutions are there. Active and passive solutions. Active solutions of power. Wherever the power is there, we can use it.
Right,
Passive solutions depend on cold, dry ice. They use dry ice.
right.
Okay, or cold safe boxes. Their solution are maximum 5 days or 7 days. Beyond that, there is no solutions. So the industry has to think of to enhance to minimum to 10 days to 15 days.
I think forget about this. As a common man, think about a situation, we go to a chemist shelf. There are chemists, the medical shops, whose refrigerators are not working, whose products are lying on the shelves where the sun has a direct sunlight. Look at those products. These are something, we are responsible. We ourselves are responsible to make sure that product which is lying on a shelf, which needs to be protected for 25 degree, does not remain 25 degree. It goes to 40 degrees or 35 degrees, in normal. What will happen to those difficult products where your refrigerators are not working and we need to maintain a product at 2 to 8. I remember a situation of a product API, you may be aware, a breast cancer drug, eribulin mesylate, which was developed by ASI many years back, 15 years back. It used to go at minus 80 degrees. Okay, one small 100 grams into a truck full of a dry ice. I'm talking about 20 years back. The company lost 100 crores worth of material because something went wrong in one country when the material was being transferred from one country to another. Those are very big areas. Today, what we are interested is the last mile connectivity for the patient. What is happening, whether my patient is getting the product at that temperature or not. So I think what you said is like manufacturer needs to be responsible. I just want to know from Dr. Mahesh, your view on such kind of a cold chain and connectivity for a difficult products like biologicals. What is happening in this area, and or what are we doing differently as compared to classical pharma?
And frankly, the biologics is where we need to, again, it's the requirements are much more higher. Right?
Yes.
This is where we need to use this as our poster child of saying, if we can deliver a biologic very well, then we know we can do everything else.
Correct.
So now what are the components of the entire value chain that we can work on? I think one of the ones that was brought up is, can you actually keep it outside for a longer period of time? And can the product be tweaked in the formulation in the way that it is done? Stability can be improved. I think that's that's a technically more complex solution. It's obviously doable, it is being done, but it's going to require more work, and it's going to be more expensive for the product. I think the other bit is what can we do in terms of monitoring it? Because today we are estimating, there are a lot more tools today that understand what temperature excursions it has gone through along the way. More importantly, what is proactive? Let's move from a reactive to a proactive way of saying, what proactively can I understand that this is it? I've reached this limit. This has to be intervened now. This product needs to be handled in a different way going forward. Otherwise, I'm going to lose the entire batch, and I'm going to deliver a substandard product to my patients, which I don't want to do. If none of those are things that are working, or on top of those things that are working, you also then need to look at and say, what is it that I'm doing with the data that I've collected so far in terms of optimizing the last mile connectivity of the supplier who's delivering to that particular pharmacy or to that particular home.
Right.
Who I always know that DHL is the best one who can get it there because they know their routes, or I have prioritized DHL as the only one who will do this delivery for me because yes, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but I know it is going to get there. A lost product is way more expensive than a product that you've actually spent some money on to get it to the last mile. Once a product is manufactured, throwing it out, way more expensive. Whether or not people realize it, the cost of just closing that deviation runs into thousands of dollars minimally, which means we're talking lakhs and lakhs of rupees just to close the deviation, right? So what can we do to say, let me optimize that last lane connectivity through the right vendor selection, through the right route optimization, because now I know this route takes this much time versus this route takes this much time, because it's typically the kind of things that you're talking about, Dr. Lamba, is going to be road connectivity. And that's something that we need to get a lot more better on, because now there's data available. There's GPS data telling you that this takes so much time to connect. This vendor is better at getting it out there versus this vendor is not so good at getting it out there. I think I'll give an extreme example if you allow me. Let's think about regenerative medicine. That's where we are moving towards after biologics. What's regenerative medicine? Stem cells, all of these more complex CAR-T therapies. There are two companies in the country today who have CAR-T therapy that is approved. This is even more complex. This is where you're taking patient cells, sending them to another site, getting them transformed, manufactured, whatever else that you want to call it, and goes back. Now you have a limited time period to do this because these are live patient cells that are being worked on. If we start to think about this as the bar and the barrier that we want to cross, that's when we start to optimize everything very, very well. When it comes to regenerative medicine, the other way to think about it is 75% of heart and lungs that are donated do not get used.
Wow,
Look at this as a supply chain problem, because 10% of the patients who are waiting for heart and lungs actually get it. So is there a demand? Absolutely. Is there a supply? Yes, better than what is being consumed, because only 25% of it is getting consumed. Now, why is this the case? It is because of supply chain. One of the complexities, you are working with something that has a very, very, very limited shelf life, and you need to figure out how that is optimized. What's the solution? Obviously, improvement of the kinds of things that we are talking about, but also a technology solution. That's why there is a whole industry that is looking at, can I get synthetic organs made? Can I get organ life improvement to be done? So it's a combination of both of these components. What do you do to improve your own supply chain from a data collection perspective? I'm a big believer in tech and data. Today we have the opportunity to get so much more data. Let's use that to say I've optimized everything in terms of my stability life cycle for the product. I've optimized the storage temperature of the product. I've optimized the delivery of how it is getting there. And then last but not least, if I did have a temperature excursion, I get to know about it early so that I can intervene and do something about it, moving it from reactive to proactive.
Right. Thank you. I think this is really thought-provoking, this example which you gave. And I believe, and I think I will just take comments from Dr. Datta also in this case. What needs to be done, in this case of, a cold chain management, especially for difficult products, especially, as he said, the benchmark, if you can do it for biologics, you can do it for the same. So is it that technology is not there? I don't believe technology is existing. Infrastructure not there. I still believe India has got the infrastructure. Is it the systems not working, or the processes which are not monitored properly? What is, in your opinion, why this kind of a failures are happening, in your opinion?
First, I will say a bit about one good success story or a positive news. Venkatanaran Garu is knowing about that. During the COVID time, Dr. Reddy's used to supply Sputnik. And it was, distributed by Apollo group of hospitals.
Right.
So, and it has to be stored at sub-zero temperature. And there was at midnight, there was a temperature excursion. And, the guy who was looking after that in Apollo, he was sleeping. But it went up to the top level of Dr. Reddy's. In their mobile phone, they got the alert, and they woke the Apollo management. And immediately corrective measures were taken up. So during emergency, our system really works well, which I have seen, and that's why I'm very optimistic about that.
That proves that point, that technology is available.
Yes, sir.
Infrastructure is available. It's the mindset, the monitoring, the procedures, and who's monitoring it. It was Dr. Reddy's. So the system, the whole machinery was working. Was it for some other?
Everyone was there in their mobile phone that
exactly. So what is the intent in that? If he's really in emergency situation, we work much better. That's what we have seen in most of the cases. Yes, please.
So, as far as these biologics are concerned, most of the biologics, active solution is the major this thing where, you have a power backup. First is you connect with the power, and then there is a battery backup. So, through that cold chain, if you send it, that problem doesn't arise. But yes, we are going to the next level of biologics, that is the cell therapy, which Dr. Mahesh was talking about. Yes. And this cell therapy, we have to send it through cryogenic containers in liquid nitrogen.
Right.
And there again, yes, technology is there, solution is also there, but you have to choose the proper reliable partner. The partner should be like with Envertroner, we are sending it across the globe with their active cold chain solutions, and we don't have any complaints so far. Cost increases with the shipment, this thing. But one solution which I prefer, and I would like to say that when we develop the product from R&D perspective, when we develop the product, we should have that extra buffer. That I am recommending 120 hours in this temperature, but if there is a temperature excursion, how long it can withstand? Or do I need to straight away throw away the product if there is a temperature excursion? Whether I can bear another 10 hours of temperature excursion, and that to plus minus 10 degree or might be 30 degree. Those things we need to address at the development stage itself, which will help in the long run, which mostly people actually ignore those things in the development stage because less time is given to the R&D. Once you have a lead, we have to file it and go to the market.
Right.
But lot of work, background work has to be done.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dutta. So I think that proves that, of course, we are not lacking technology, we are not lacking infrastructure in most of the cases. But what we need to do is to really look at how do we implement. So what is the level of execution? What is the level of monitoring? And I think many companies have started adopting AI in this area. Like, for example, you talked about alerts which are coming on the phones of senior leaders, so that everybody in the supply chain can be alerted what is happening, why it is happening, where it is happening, and things like that. So let's look at a situation when you talk about last mile connectivity. We see that 90% of the work is done in, for example, sourcing, procurement, manufacturing, storage, warehousing, distribution. But there are many issues which are at 5 to 10% last mile. The connectivity which talk about is connectivity to the medical shop or to the patient. That's where many things are going wrong or needs improvement, because as I was saying, when there is a recall, when something goes wrong and we want to recall a product, as far as the India market is concerned, our transparency levels are much lower. We are only 30% average connected and 60% is not connected. I think I need to look at from technology point of view or systems point of view or maybe digital transformation point of view. What do you think what we need to do to improve this last mile connectivity as far as our frigid supply chains are concerned?
I think what you're alluding to, and I'll give you a small example. When I did a project about productivity of various people in the sales force in the Indian scenario,
Right.
medical
Yes.
reps,
Right.
etc., etc. So I visited several cities, met several MRs, understood what they do, how they do, etc., etc. So they always receive a lot of samples, lot of such things, and where do they have to keep it? It is in their own 1 BHK or 2 BHK home.
Right.
And in fact, one of the good, better ones happens to be a lady from Kolkata. She said that, sir, I can't keep all of this in my home. So therefore, I have rented out a small room nearer the central part of the city.
Wow.
Where I'm keeping it. Small, it's a 5 feet by 10 feet. Somehow I got that small room. I'm keeping it there. Also because I got married and my in-laws wouldn't accept, keeping all this stuff.
Many samples coming
in our
home.
house. That's what she said. But then it made me think
Great
about
idea. Yes.
yeah, that huge, big companies
Yes.
are all also acting similarly. Where do you expect them to keep it? How do you expect them to keep it properly? Now, more and more, the criticality of storage and everything is going up. And then how do you do that? That's something that made me think. So it is a problem. And I'm happy that, you brought that out. The last mile, what I'm talking about is at least, through the human, but there are a lot more, which is, as Chandu said, that if it goes to some interior villages, where you will even find an expired product on the shelf.
Yes.
So to first of all, they keep it. Why? Again, of course, the retailer has paid for it or is going to pay for it, and therefore he wants to make money. But is there a way that we can find that out? Slowly using blockchain, we will be able to do that more. Blockchain availability, acceptance, all of this also has to improve much more. I mean, we are in a 1% stage of adoption, if at all, of blockchain, unless they are in very expert linked supply chains. Like for example, as Dr. Mahesh said, in his business, I think a lot more educated people are there in the entire supply chain. Therefore, there it may be, and then the cost of a loss, if it was, is humongous, and so it cannot be, acceptable. Whereas in all other places, this education will be required to be much more. Through digital means, we should be able to control where, when, what is sitting, and whether we can do. And again, as I said, the manufacturer's responsibility to see that it's at the right place, at the right fellow's hands.
As I said, track and trace is available.
Track and trace is
Right?
available.
Blockchain technology is available.
Absolutely.
Question is intent and who's going to bear that expense. Because today it is not a law in India. There's no enforcement on this last mile connectivity. Who's getting your product? Where is that transparency? So I think that is one area we need to really think together as a country. Because if a small place like Singapore, and I was giving example of a small place like Kuwait, they are hard pressed today of availability of medicines today, but whatever they are doing is all track and trace compliant. What US is looking for, what Europe is looking for, they will implement it in their domestic country.
Absolutely.
Because when it goes to the pharmacy shop, they can come to know everything about what has happened with this product, including the storage conditions at whatever place. So I think that's something which we as a group need to do. I would like to know.
There's one more
Yes.
small point that I would like to add there, is that last mile sometimes may need a little extra cost. For example, you
is.
may have, instead of a 12-wheel truck, it can be a 4-wheel small truck that can go up to a taluka level.
Yes.
From there to a village and to a certain remote village, maybe it needs some more transportation and therefore some more cost. Now, the MRP concept somehow doesn't help this. Because for the product to reach there, it will need a little more expense.
Right.
Now, I know, I'm not saying that we have to penalize the person in the village so that he should pay more for what I will pay less in the city. No, but some form of subsidizing that should come in from some sources or from the companies themselves, that okay, I subsidize this, this extra cost for villages, but I'll make my money anyway from the cities or somewhere else. But that thought should be put in place among corporates, among distributors, among everyone else. That's the point I want.
Yes, please.
I'll just add one more component. So I think very valid, right? Yes, what do we do to make sure that we deliver it as far as possible with the right cold chain? After that, what do we do to store it as well, right? So now, I mean, you can't store this product in a pharmacy in an envirotainer, as somebody was referring to.
Right.
But now there are solutions where there are cryogenic boxes that can be kept, and the cryogenic boxes have a longer shelf life. So doing that level of investment may be something, again, that the companies need to take the burden on and say, this is how I'm going to improve the supply chain and the last mile delivery. And one other sort of technological solution, as you were saying, how many times do we actually go and see that the product was kept correctly in a pharmacy? I think it's also that education of saying, if you're taking this, if you're holding on to this product, did it come to you cold? Did it not come to you cold? And are we actually educating that to say, based on that, because sometimes it's not about the fact that the refrigerator is not working. The refrigerator is just too full. And the pharmacy doesn't want to keep another refrigerator because then that's again like electricity bill for them.
Yeah.
But that awareness is what we also need to build. And that again, if we go back to the saying, where does that onus and where does that burden lie? I think that onus and burden lies with the manufacturer, because it's the manufacturer who wants to make sure that that product is actually curing the patient who's taking it. And so therefore, have I done everything that can possibly help to get there?
Right.
I just want to add one
Go ahead,
thing.
please.
Dr. Mahesh has said about education part, which I strongly agree with it, because from my experience, I have seen one distributor bringing out a anti-snake venom pack out of the refrigerator, where it is written, do not refrigerate.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I think coming now to, I think I would like to make it little bit more free and not bound by, some questions. But I would like to hear from, for example, Mr. Chandu, as a supply chain head for a big company and a very networked kind of a company. What is it at one or two areas, in your opinion, for improving the supply chain resilience? What as a country, or maybe if you, what you can say is what you are doing, or you are already implementing, or you have something in the mind, or is there in the pipeline, what as a country we need to do to improve the supply chain effectiveness?
So the challenge pharma itself a very complexity, okay, and stringent quality checks are there. So
By the way,
priority-
just to caution, I don't agree with this. Reason, We talk about pharma is highly complicated, pharma is like this, strictly controlled. So are others. So are foods. So are IT products. So are chips. Okay. Why we are getting the high quality chips? We don't get failures there, and we get failures in our products.
No, what I am saying,
No, I'm just.
I am not saying the only pharma is the complexity. Pharma is the one of the complexity in terms of the manufacturing, stringent quality. Second is a lengthy process. So our objective to any industry, even pharma product availability in the market is the topmost priority. To improve the product availability, we always need to look at the lead time reduction and quality checks. To improve the lead times, we have to work out the procurement lead time and process lead time, quality lead time, and distribution, logistics part. So that way, we always continue focus on those areas to improve the product availability in the market. In this process, a lot of challenges already we discussed. So how to improve the product with the right place, right time, in the right product.
Have you dealt with something like a supply chain security initiative, for example, of a US, where there are counterfeit products, or a falsified medicine directive of Europe, FMD directive?
Yes. We implemented a 2D barcode system and a track and trace also implemented in the organization. And most of the US company we implemented, whereas some countries ROW market, where Latin countries or African countries, most of the 90% of products are covered. Some another 10% still we are in the process to cover in the 2D barcode under track and trace implementation.
Just one extension of this question. Have you experienced it a counterfeit in your sourcing, in your APIs, in your key starting materials sometimes?
So yes, we experienced. Most of the API suppliers or KSM suppliers, they don't have that much of track and trace implemented, 2D barcode not implemented. But yes, in formulation, most of the pharma companies implement. We also implement more. We covered more than 90% of the products.
I give you one example. Started my career in '89 from MSD in Bombay. My first job was as a manufacturing person for manufacturing a very famous product called dexamethasone injection called Decadron. When we opened the containers of an amino acid, which is one of the components, we found that, to cut the story short, middle of that container was starch. And this came from China in 1989. Top layer is amino acid, bottom is amino acid, center is starch. Similar cases, oxytetracycline in 80s, 90s. You had turmeric contamination coming from China in oxytetracycline. The product looks like turmeric powder. Okay, so they used to mix in the center layer. Forget about 89. 2010, a product was sent from China and we received it. We found it's a completely different product. Completely different product. And when people went there to audit that company, surprising thing happened. The label is of a particular site in China. When people went there was one person sitting in the security, and there was a chimney throwing out some smoke showing the facility is running. When we entered the facility, there's nobody there. There is hardly any person there, only one security person, one person in the chimney area to show facility is running. When we went inside, what they were doing, they were bringing a product from Germany, showing that they are manufacturing that in China and giving a label of manufacturer at China, this site, and supplying at many places. But actually they were just distributors of the product. Okay, this is still safe. Then situation where you have a product which is already contaminated partially with starch or something else. Many times these people are very, very smart. They don't add, like you must have seen melamine contamination in foods, baby foods, many years back. Same thing happened. Exactly same thing happened of a supply chain security failure because a counterfeit was getting into the supply chain. Dr. Mahesh, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add one bit of sort of takeaway from this, right? Because I think what you brought up is very important. Going back to the very first point that you made about SOPs. Today we have SOPs where we say through 10+1s sampling, or we say 100% sampling, and so on and so forth. I think this is the background that is there to it, and that is what we need to share, so that somebody somewhere does not believe, why do I need to actually sample 28 containers that have come? I'll just sample a few of them.
Yeah.
And that is where experience counts, right? That is something that that cannot be replaced by any SOP. That is something that cannot be replaced by any years of experience coming from somebody who's actually involved in putting that SOP together. So if we sort of, I just sort of want to tie this together to saying it's about understanding what it is that our purpose is, and that everything that we've put in place has only room for improvement further. So if somebody is executing on the floor, somebody is executing with a vendor, start thinking about what can I do better, as opposed to what can I shortcut and why do I actually need to do this?
Absolutely.
I think we've come a long way as an industry from that sort of a mindset. I came back to India in 2009, and I think we've seen a lot of the dramatic amount of change, both in regulation. I think you brought up also about the amount of funding that has come. So the industry is come a long way, but it's going to go even further, and we need to have these sorts of mindsets even more and more built in, so that you start to question why if you're not convinced, but don't ever not follow your procedures.
Thank you.
I
Yes,
would
please.
just like
Please
a
continue.
very good comment,
Yes.
because that's exactly what I meant. When I said that the spirit behind the SOPs should be taught, not just the SOPs. The spirit behind the SOPs, why we are doing something that we are doing. Otherwise, it will be done very blindly, and then there may be many gaps which are not there in the SOP. But then that happens, and then that leads to a failure, by and large. And today's topic being supply chain, Lambaji, I see it as a holistic thing. Supply chain is not just about material coming in or my finished goods logistics. It is everything from beginning of order placement to the vendors
That's
to get
right.
things from there. From there onwards, everything else that happens in the factory and then in the distribution system, and then finally up to the last mile, up to the patient. And in this whole thing, there are 110 things that can be done. Lots of things that can be done, lots of digital help that can be taken, and many things that can be done if you take it properly focused and look deep into what all leads into that. As I said, even large companies which are sending excipients to us, you ask them for a digital COA and you don't get them. You don't get them.
Yeah.
They say that I can't make a digital COA only for you.
Yes.
I mean, you are hardly taking 2-3 tons from us, whereas I have hundreds of tons people who are not asking for it. They are happy with the paper COA. Why should I give you digital? Now we had to had a lot of struggle with such people, and so it's an evolving world. And in India, I'm happy that it's happening faster, as Dr. Mahesh just now said, and many more things. And as we dig deeper, we are finding that many more things can be done in order to finally see that the patient is safe and he gets an efficacious medicine at the right time. One small question, but it's a little far-fetched, is we are talking about so much of cold chain and everything else. There is one technology which is of additive manufacturing, 3D printing,
Yes.
which has been attempted in some hospitals in the Western countries. And I was told, I'm not sure, that one big hospital chain from India is also going to attempt that. And that is for making the drug available next to the bed of the patient, because these drugs, more and more complicated drugs, are not that stable. And therefore, best is to create it there and inject it there.
That's how this concept of a compounding pharmacy
Of a compound.
recame. In the last couple of years, you see number of examples like this.
Exactly.
Made to order
Need to
kind
order
of a product.
next to the bed
Next to the bed.
of the
Yes.
patient. So all of those
Personalized
supply chain-
medicine is all about that, right? Personalized
about
medicine is all about that. Cell and gene therapy is all about that. So absolutely.
Yeah, stability otherwise it's a huge problem. All of us know the biggest pharmaceutical company in India, a couple of decades ago, was all about the stability data which was fudged.
Yes, absolutely.
Therefore, so stability itself, consumes more than 50% of effort of the pharmaceuticals, and all that is cut short if we can do a.
I think this kind of a discussion can go on and on. It can even take a whole day, because the kind of expertise and experience, the combined experience which is sitting here is much more, and then can be much more thought-provoking for some leaders and middle management to really put that into practice. But I see that, over the, in these years, the successful supply chain organizations or pharmaceutical companies would be those companies who I gave that, a framework of 5 Ds of diversifying, digitizing, decentralizing, de-risking, and also designing for, a kind of a success and without any kind of a failure. So gone is the time when people were looking at low cost and cost optimized supply chain. Today, the supply chain is much more focused towards the patient, the last mile connectivity, and making sure that throughout this supply chain, right from procurement to manufacturing to warehousing, distribution, logistics, and to the retail pharmacy, and leaving then to the patient, if we can secure that supply chain security through digital means, that's something organizations would be the organizations of future who would be investing in these technologies. So I think I would like to thank my fellow panelists here who did a fantastic job in giving various different thought-provoking ideas and their own experiences. And I think we can continue this kind of a discussion somewhere else. But it is very useful. And if there is any kind of a question, probably we would like to take.
Hello, my name is Shashank. I work as a serialization consultant. That was an excellent discussion related to the supply chain. But during the discussion, I had a thought like we have gone through COVID, which was a deadly pandemic. So, how prepared is the Indian pharma industry and the supply chain if at all such pandemic comes in the next decade? And what are the lessons we should learn from the earlier pandemic in the supply chain so that in the next pandemic we are ready to face it? This is for the entire panel.
Please, free for the panel.
All right, I'll take a shot at it. I think first of all, we have to applaud ourselves as a country on what we did and how we did manage the whole pandemic. And one of the key components of managing that pandemic was distribution of vaccines. In a supply chain context, when we think about it, what we did amazingly well was manufacture those vaccines, deliver those vaccines, get people vaccinated, and document all of that. This is unsurmounted, unprecedented in the history of the country. Now, one of the it does really deserve an applaud for the entire value chain plus the community at large on how this was possible. If you were to go and look at your question on what do we need to learn and what do we need to do differently, I think there's a few things that we can still improve upon. Let's look at how Pfizer managed their relationship with BioNTech. This was when they first ever commercialized an mRNA vaccine, which is even more complex from the supply chain logistics perspective. I won't get into the manufacturing of it, but from a supply chain logistics perspective, because it needs what is called as an ultra cold chain. Why? Because of the lipids that are used for stabilizing the mRNA and so on and so forth. They did everything along the way from managing everything that we were talking about. Did they have dual sourcing suppliers for everything, especially for the lipids? They did. Did they have more than one manufacturing location? They did. Did they apply a component of plant in a box, which means a smaller setup which can be easily done for manufacturing? They did. And I think those are the kinds of things that we can do more of as well, right? Today we had a few facilities that were manufacturing the vaccines that got delivered. We had, of course, very large capacities there. We can be much more segregated from a manufacturing perspective so that there is a lot more resilience around that manufacturing. Plus, there is a lot more local control of that manufacturing. And the other bit is where we can become a lot more self-sufficient in terms of this raw materials, the dependency that we did have at that period of time, which we can further manage. Last but not least is the component of patient education. I will never go away from that. Right? It has to be something that patients need to know what is it that they're getting, why they're getting it, how should it have come to them, so that if there was ever a compromise on the quality of that, it's already identified.
Absolutely. Anyone? Please continue.
Not only pharma, vaccines are available. Yes, we have done. Indian companies have done a lot. during COVID period. But the only thing is from government side, they have to improve the infrastructure. Patients are dead because of the shortage of the beds in the hospital, not because of the vaccines, not because of the medicines of the COVID medicine. That government has to ready for the situation comes within the next decade or something. They have to keep it ready. China has done fantastic job during COVID. Even India also, we have to prepare for that way.
Right. Want to say? I think when it comes to an emergency response, we Indians have done it in the past. Wherever we are driven to the wall, we find a solution. We make sure that we will get a solution by even if it is a jugaad technology, that's okay. But we find a solution. But I think what example Dr. Mahesh gave is exemplary for throughout the world, where people gave examples of the supply chain resilience of the vaccines that time, not only for India, but it started exporting and delivering the product worldwide for the patients across the globe. I think there is a lot to learn, but from your point of view, I would say from track and trace and also last mile connectivity, there's a lot needs to be done as far as the domestic market is concerned. We have done it for US, Europe, but definitely we need to do much more for India.
So Dr. Lamba, I take it from there. We did a one-off COVID excellent story. I mean, all of us know that. But the reality is that going forward, a one-off is not going to help, because more and more drugs are becoming complicated in terms of manufacture, storage, distribution, all of it. Therefore, we have to find sustainable means of doing it in a good manner. What we have done once for COVID, or maybe a few times nowadays, but I understand it's about 40% of the new drugs that are getting filed nowadays are all biologics.
Absolutely. Yes.
40%. And so the simple aspirin and the paracetamol and the metformins, etc., are all going to be there. But then the percentage value that comes out of that will be much, much smaller. And therefore, much of the research effort and the governmental expenditures would also start going towards these 40%. Because they are solving, more complicated problems also. And therefore, the supply chain, entire industry will have to come up in terms of with the ability to sustain all of these various ways of doing things. Those various temperatures that you spoke about, the -70 and all that, which is not that easy on a large scale. And all that to be done, accomplished, that's still abhi Delhi dur hai.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. I have a decade of experience sitting there, and I am Roop Shankar Mishra. I represent Signalex, risk infrastructure company, mostly working with pharma companies to evaluate the third-party vendors they are working. You said right, the journey start from the vendors you are working, but what we have also observed, we see those vendors with whom they are also working. Maybe their director is associated with other companies also. And those companies are having such kind of litigation issues or sanctions or a different kind of restrictions on them. And they, as a buyer, you visit to their vendor office and you see everything is fine. But most of the cases we miss how they are functionally performing and procuring, giving those output to the buyer and taking those inputs from the third party vendors. They are working, those already in the trouble. And this is what we have seen when you work with the vendors, there is always going to be a delay into the supply chain. My question is how we can, mitigate the risk of delaying the supply chain while dealing with these critical vendors. Even they don't look a critical vendor because they are dealing with their own third party vendor. Those carries a risk and they affect a business as a buyer. When I deal, as a buyer, I deal with those vendors. So how we can mitigate this delay in supply chain?
I think some part which we spoke about that, as I said, we need to move away from this one simple exercise of carrying out a vendor qualification to a continuous vendor verification. So when you do a CVV process, you need to check not only what is going on at their manufacturing site, but also what is happening at their sourcing side. What are the issues? What are the challenges which are happening? Because when you do the continuous process or continuous vendor verification process, you will see that these kind of things then get visible. they will get on the surface. But if you do this exercise once in 3 years, or once in 4 years, or once in 5 years in some cases, you will never come to know what are the underlying causes of failures which is happening at the manufacturer or a vendor stage, or maybe a subcontractor stage, what is happening, like you said, litigation which is happening, or maybe there are other issues which are related to financial issues at subcontractors. So I think we have to move away from a one-off exercise to a continuous kind of a verification process.
So my question, I'm actually from Avitronics. I'm the founder of digital signage LEDs. We have started digitalizing all the pharma. We work with Hetero, Dr. Reddy's and all. So in fact, I was taking semaglutide from last 2 months, and I lost 10 kilos. And so then I had a shock of my life yesterday, 2 days back, saying that detecting out of specification impurity in active pharmaceutical ingredient. No, since Mr. Venkatrana, Dr. Reddy's. So you can throw more light on this, because you have a lot of stringent, as Chandu sir has said, a lot of stringent audits, and so many things are in place. And it's today obesity, I would say the same hysteria is there as COVID times, where people are just, I see, going randomly to pharmas, buying Monjaro, Ozempic, and because of body shaming, they want to get married, they want to look young. Most youngsters see this, sir. Yeah. So when this thing happened, and also the shares started plummeting, of course, obviously there will be a fallout financially for the companies. Now, is it because of, as Chandu said, in COVID time, is it because of the necessity, because obesity in India or in the world today is such a big disease, a pandemic, is equally of that scale like any other epidemic? Obesity today, type 2 diabetes and all, or what would have gone wrong, and what can be done to prevent this kind of impurities in the APIs?
See, although first of all that I'm not in Dr. Reddy's right now, I've just recently come out of that, superannuated. I would not know the exact detail of what might have gone wrong with semaglutide API. But the fact is that by and large, all companies, especially the ones that have made a name for themselves in the marketplace, have very good systems of how they manage their vendors. But even then, what we are now talking about is the continuous vendor verification, as Dr. Lamba was suggesting, rather than just going and doing some audits and finding it out. Because me as a consumer of their API can never be there 100% of the time, right? I cannot constantly be there to check or police what they are doing. There has to be a trust built between the two companies that these are the SOPs that we are following. For all you know, maybe they themselves were surprised with the outcome of what came in that particular API. In this case, semaglutide. No, all major countries have their own very good procedures before giving you approvals. But then, they say that if there are multiple, what's it called? There is a phenomenon.
I think the product is approved, as he knows and everybody knows. Product is approved, product is good. But there is a variability in the process. And every unit or every batch sometimes goes through a set parameters. If it passes the set parameters, the product is released. But the good thing is, if the company realizes later that apart from set parameters, there is something else which has gone wrong, then that triggers a recall procedure that, okay, I want to withdraw the product from the market because it is not meeting some parameter which was not there in my specifications. So probably it is one of that case which happens in the industry worldwide. It's not only in India, it happens worldwide. There are voluntary recalls by companies. And I think it is a kind of a proactive approach sometimes the company uses, not as a reactive strategy, but a proactive to withdraw the product from the market, redo the whole thing, make a continuous improvement, and then relaunch that.
Well, I think there's so many lasts, but I always say I'm biased towards my gender, so sorry. I have to give the mic to the lady. It's already a male-dominated arena, so let me give her the mic.
Please.
I'm Janvi, and my recent work is with NHS London and NHS Barchester London in their procurement department, analyzing their costs. And my question is, tilted towards a whole health sector, not just pharma. Like when we talked about the like last mile delivery, like the ensuring the consumer is getting the product. How well do you think like our PPPs, health units are making use of the technology, like how they're integrating it and making sure that they are serving the end customer properly? That because if the like PPPs are where like government can do the regulatory work to basically serve the rural side of the India, right? So yeah.
Very intelligent question. Anybody from the group?
I'll take a stab at it. I think the PPPs have played a role in some of the things that are of much more broader impact, right? So again, if we go back to and which is actually where India has played a big role, right? If we look at vaccines, which is again where India has had a leadership position. Second is very much in the interest of PPPs to go and actually influence that, because that's more proactive, more preventive, and has a larger outreach. So in that area, if you start to think about some of the funding initiatives that have been done, some of the ways that the organizations work, so there is a number of initiatives that are there that are sponsored or participated by many of these PPP ventures, if you will, where there's a component of, let's say, CEPI, or there's a component of UNICEF, or there's a component of WHO, or there's a component of the Clinton Foundation or the Gates Foundation, and so on and so forth. All of these coming together to make something happen. Right? And a good example of that, if you want to look at, is to say when India became ready for launching its IPV, right? Because you have to be an IPV-free, native IPV-free country for a certain number of years before you can launch it. This was possible, one, because of India's own efforts, but a lot of that was to do with all of these PPP efforts coming together as well to make sure that India then got the technology to actually manufacture it. So there are examples, I would say, more so, and there's of course a lot more that can be done, but more so in the area of vaccines than in anything else.
Yes. So I think, as I said, I wish to thank everyone, my fellow panelists, for a really very engaging session and making this, I would say, after lunch, little boring session of a supply chain into a very interesting session. The credit goes to really this, this panelist. Thank you very much. And I thank the Mahesh team and the IPMMA for organizing this very engaging discussion, very important topic of supply chain resilience.